Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about baby proofs. So in order to do baby proofs, these are a couple of the steps that we should follow. Like draw the appropriate marks on the diagram, meaning label it with the using information, complete a conclusion, and use a theorem or postulate when you are writing the reason for it. So let's talk about it. So we are given that M is the midpoint of AB. So if M is the midpoint, we know that M will divide a line segment into two congruent parts, which would mean that BM is congruent to AM. And for the reasoning, we can write that a midpoint divides a line segment into two congruent parts. And we are going to try to stay away from like just writing like definition of. We want to be able to write down what the definition is. Then we are given that AB bisects XY. So if AB bisects XY, similar situation, and when something gets bisected, it creates two congruent parts. So XM is congruent to MY. Same thing, we will say a bisector divides a line segment into two congruent parts. Now, we see that we are also given that there's a 90-degree there, but in the given situation, they only talked about this AB bisecting XY, so I'm not talking as much about the 90-degree. We want to stick to the given situation for now, but later on, as we keep going in our proof journey, we will talk more about that. But for today, we'll keep it limited. Okay, so then we are given that VC is an angle bisector. So we know an angle bisector cuts an angle into two congruent parts. And I know it's kind of feeling like a little redundant from the previous two examples, but we have to follow through. And if we have a VC, then the following one would be BVC. So BVC, same thing, angle bisector cuts an angle into two congruent parts. And as you can see, like, yes, it's a little bit writing, but we have to make sure that we are writing as much as we can. So like whoever is reading our proof, they understand what we are talking about. In this one, we are given that ADB is congruent to BDC. So I'm going to go ahead, label that. And then the conclusion we can reach is like, if we have these two congruent parts, then DB or BD would have to be an angle bisector. And you could just go ahead, write down the definition of an angle bisector, or you can say if a ray is cutting an angle into two congruent parts, then the ray is an angle bisector. I'm just going to keep it simple and say angle bisector creates two congruent parts. And as you can see, like some of the reasons are getting repetitive. They're kind of like similar to what we have been working on so far. All right, let's take a look at number 5. Number 5 says line P is parallel to line Q. So line P is parallel to line Q. With that information, a conclusion we can reach is angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. There are a bunch of things we can talk about, but for this one, we can start with this by saying that if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, TRAN, transversal, then, and these are our corresponding angles, and corresponding angles are congruent. Okay. Let's take a look at the following one. Once again, we're given that P is parallel to Q, and we are saying that angle 4 and angle 5, we're not saying they're congruent. Angle 4 and angle 5 are not congruent, so I'm not labeling them together, but they are, we know, same side interior angles, so that would mean they are supplementary. So then we can say if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the same side interior angles are supplementary. Now, sometimes we are not given the lines are parallel, and I know this is not in our page. Sometimes we will be given in this situation like angle 1 is congruent to angle 7. So in this situation, if we are given that angle 1 is congruent to angle 7, we can reach a conclusion just with that information that P and Q are parallel. So we can say that P is parallel to Q, and we can say if two alternate exterior angles are congruent between two lines, then the lines are parallel. So we are getting to a point where we will not be always given that the lines are parallel, but we will have to prove that the lines are parallel. Please make sure that you copy down all the notes, and if you have any questions, bring it to class.